wrestling fans, and welcome to the Wrestle Talk Podcast. For the next 2 hours, we will bring you the latest pro wrestling news, in-depth analysis of all your favorite promotions from across the globe, and much, much more. We will also bring you exclusive interviews with the greatest professional wrestling personalities on the local, national, and international levels. If you want to follow the Wrestle Talk Podcast, check us out online at www.wrestletalkpodcast.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And now, it's time for the reigning, defending, undisputed leader in pro wrestling podcast, the Wrestle Talk Podcast.
Wrestling fans, welcome into episode 407 of the world famous Wrestle Talk Podcast, coming to you live from the St. Louis area, KC, and the West Virginia area. Thank you for joining us tonight. Make sure that you definitely like and share this broadcast, as we will be broadcasting all night long. My name is the one and only Road Dog DJ Big Sexy Chris Rodell. You know I have a co-host tonight, so I'm going to bring in the one and only, ladies and gentlemen, from the I-70 Sports Media Team and the Roundabout Sports Podcast, Mr. Jeremy Carp. Carp.
Thank you. What is up, Big
brother?
Sexy? How are you? Looking fabulous as always.
Oh, you are looking good too, man. How's everything been going? Family been
Things
going?
have been great. Life has definitely gotten much better, and I'm just thankful to be here. And most importantly, thankful to be here alongside you. I mean, the voice of Dynamo Pro, and definitely somebody I'm always honored to be alongside for co-hosting the Wrestle Talk Podcast.
I mean, hey, we did it on Roundabout about a month and a half ago or so.
Yes, we have. Can't wait to do it again.
I think we might need to do a blues pre-show or
preview. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Without a doubt,
you probably should do one with Sonny and Renee for the Kansas City Chiefs as well. So I mean,
Sonny Money and the Night Owl to get them in on this.
Yeah. So we got two great guests tonight. Bill Bain, who is become a backstage regular at the WWE, wrestles all over. He's been around for a while. And we got esteemed author Vinny Barry on tonight. He's going to talk about his new book, Wrestleville. So, I mean, I know you're ready. I know you're ready for that.
I'm definitely ready. I know I've read about Lance Von Erich, the fascinating story of the non-Von Erich that Vinny Barry took out in the past. So I'm looking forward to his next work on Wrestleville.
And I kind of want to go back and talk about the whole Lance Von Erich thing, because that to me is interesting, because the history of the business is interesting to me. And I want to know what he's found out, how that all really did come about. If there's like some secret plan or something that came about. So, Carp, we wouldn't be anywhere where we would be here at the Wrestle Talk Podcast if it wasn't for our great sponsors. So, do you want to go ahead and take care of this first? I'm going to throw them up here on the air on the screen.
Oh, absolutely. We got to thank Royal Mills Transportation, Dewan Mills. We got to thank Raft Buns Engraving. I mean, a Wrestle Talk Podcast mug is just $20, and Hardcore Hoss, we're thinking about you. It's always on there, and they're always amazing. Nobleman's Barber Lounge in KC, Missouri. You got to ask for Pete the Barber. He's the go-to guy for it all. Kincaid Arcade at the Oak Park Mall. And Everything Combat with Pat Militek and Jeffrey Wilson. Interstate 70 Sports Media, yours truly, Jeremy Carp, but along with the amazing team, Adam Frex, James Knox, Eileen Holder, everybody. And, of course, the world premier fantasy wrestling group, the FWWC.
Oh, I mean, where would we be without our sponsors, Cart? I mean,
we honestly would not be at the point we are at if it wouldn't be for these sponsors, because they put their faith in us, and we just work our hardest to reciprocate that.
And I know you got a great team over there at the I-70 Sports Media. You got anything good coming up on Roundabout Sports here in the next couple of weeks?
Well, we are working on getting Sadie Blaze on a future episode of Roundabout Sports, because I know he is an absolute whiz when it comes to baseball. People know him for wrestling, but when it comes to baseball, I mean, he goes to Cooperstown every single year. The deep history and the sabermetrics of of the sport. And we are also looking at a lot of other surprise guests. But I'm just thankful James Knox, ever since the season 2 premiere has kicked off, he's my new permanent co-host. And it's just a great ride we're going with. But also be sure to check out Cardinals Off the Cuff with Andy Cockrell, Talking Dynasty with Adam Frex. I mean, there's just so much great programming on I-70 Sports Media, and I'm just blessed to have the team I have. And, of course, to have you guys here at the Wrestle Talk Podcast. You guys are my family as well.
So is the Talking Dynasty, is that like a fantasy podcast, or is it like
it runs a lot of Adam talks a lot of fantasy, but he also just goes in depth on what's going on in the world of Kansas City sports, and he kind of, much like Roundabout Sports, he goes beyond the region, but definitely for the KC market, Talking Dynasty is a great way to go. But you know,
and I'll tell you with Sadie, if you get him talking about softball, you probably won't get you'll probably fill up 2 hours right there.
That's gonna be that might even be a 2-parter episode if we're gonna get softball going.
He is legit a Hall of Famer for the.
He is a softball Hall of Famer, and you know, well deserved, of course. But I definitely look forward to it, and yeah, I know we've had great guests on the past, former baseball pitcher Ray King. We've had Toyoka Jackson on. We've had the president of the Negro League Baseball Museum, Bob Kendrick, on. So I'm like I said, I'm just excited for the future.
You'll have to get some Battlehawks people on maybe if you can. I mean,
absolutely. I already know a few guys I can maybe get in contact with. So a lot of surprises in store.
Oh well, you know what? It comes to that time of the week. We don't really have anyone to introduce this like we normally do, because Joe did this at first, then Haas took this over, but we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the greatest country in the world. So,
Sweden.
No. So if we ask everyone, if you're wearing any kind of hat wear, we ask that you please remove it as we honor the country with the singing-ish of the national anthem.
Oh boy.
Oh.
Oh god.
Oh. There goes the aneurysm.
This is about as pleasant as a hernia.
Oh, that's so.
I'd rather get a prostate exam from Captain Hook.
Oh, that is so bad. It was almost good, Mike. Oh god,
that was awful.
So every time, I'm not gonna lie, every time I'm on this podcast, and they do that, I'm like, even though you're not on the podcast, I'm like, I bet you Carp's had another aneurysm, because he can probably just feel it happening when it happens. So,
you know how, I mean, and here's a Star Wars reference for you. When Obi-Wan felt the Force, like with Alderaan getting blown up and all the millions. Yeah, that's basically me hurting when I hear Roseanne singing the national anthem. That's the type of pain I experience. I feel bad for every single person that ever has to listen to that crap version. God.
So I guess should we just move on and go and get you want to get into the meat and potatoes of this whole show and everything that's happening in the world of professional wrestling? Are you ready?
Yes,
are you?
I am so ready.
I mean, I could replay the
no.
anthem.
No.
I mean,
no.
I have it right. I have it right here.
I'm sure you do. I would appreciate it greatly. I mean, if you just don't. And, you know, I'll just enjoy my IBC cream soda while you get us started, because although listening to that national anthem did almost make me want to break out a beer.
I mean, it's America, baby. America. All right, we're gonna go ahead and jump right into it, because you know what? We got a lot. We kind of got a lot to talk about. There's been a lot happening. Yeah. I mean, it's not like nothing's happened the last few weeks in the world of professional wrestling. So let's go ahead and get in. Let's hook up with DJ Money with High Spots.
Mic check. Yeah. All right. Wrestle Talk Podcast. DJ Money. Yeah. Let's go. Welcome to High Spots, where we pop news like lamb chops. We talk shop, coming through the screens of a laptop and non-stop like I'm running speakers of blacktop. We hit hard like chair shots and backdrops, like a clock blast, look like a barely fly. Now that's hard. We up to speed while they stay slow. Wrestle Talk Podcast. Now they know we about to start the show.
Why does that guy sound familiar?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Big shout out to our broadcast partner, Big Hoss. He couldn't make it here tonight because he's doing one of the absolute worst things he could ever do in his entire life. He's moving, and Carp, you understand that moving is
100% understand that
moving is probably the worst thing ever that we could ever do in our life. And I've only planned on moving one more time in my life, and that's maybe to a house. But
that's what I can't wait till the day, whenever that day comes. And also, you put up Haas's comment. Let me tell you something, folks. Haas is literally the backbone of this entire operation.
He's like the glue. He's
the glue.
He does everything for us. He does a little bit of everything for us. So.
And the Rest Off Podcast may have been around before Haas joined, but it has gone up so much because of him. Like, he is literally family, and we're always so proud and honored to have him alongside us. So we're definitely missing you this week, but we know you'll be back soon, Haas. So big shout out to you, buddy.
Yes. So let's get into some of those high spots. You sent a couple questions. I had a couple of questions.
I did.
I'm just going to throw one randomly. I'm going to talk about something that may or may not happen tomorrow on AEW, because AEW has started their trios tournament, which I don't know exactly how you feel about adding another belt to AEW. We can talk about that separately. AEW is big into the trios concept, so I mean it makes sense.
Yeah.
So the Bucks have a mystery partner. Is it going to be Kenny Omega? And if it isn't Kenny Omega, how are they going to bring Omega back?
I think Kenny Omega would be, believe it or not, a perfect mystery partner for the Young Bucks, because I'm going to be honest right now, like, I don't know given how the main title picture is looking right now with CM Punk, and Jon Moxley, and you have the JAS, the Jericho Appreciation Society, all intertwined with everything, because you're not going to have Kenny Omega come in for a mid-card title. When you bring Kenny Omega back, he's going to come back for the big stuff, the hot shot, if he went back as solo. But you bring him in as the Bucks mystery partner, automatically that right there, the trios tournament, holy hell, you just got yourself a stacked team, and you got yourself an odds-on favorite right there.
And honestly, they're going into the tournament. Their first round opponent is the team of Andrade, Rush, and Dragon Lee. So you already know that's probably going to be a hell of a match if it is Kenny Omega. So if it's not Kenny Omega, who is going to be the Bucks? Who could be the Bucks partner? It's not going to be Adam Page. At least that's what it made it seem like last week.
Yeah. I thought for a while it was going to be Adam Page, but yeah, last week definitely knocked that theory out of the equation.
Can we talk just off topic? Can we talk about those jeans that they came out with the butterflies on them? Wasn't that?
Well, it's funny because I believe it is on this side right here. My mother, who does a lot of coloring, actually colored something that's nothing but butterflies. So there we go.
So she designed Adam Page's jeans that night, huh?
Yeah, there you go. She designed Adam Page's jeans that night, and well, if that's the case, then I definitely have to give him compliments.
Yeah, you don't get on the bad side of your mother, because
never. That's the last person whose side I want to be on the bad side of.
So, with respect to the trios tournament, if Omega comes in with the Bucks, are they kind of basically going to be the first trios champion? Because you kind of need a bigger name. I don't think that you're going to give it to the Truth Busters, or I mean, you can maybe give it to the Best Friends.
The Best Friends would probably be the best match, but honestly, I do think it has to be Omega. If Omega comes back as the Bucks partner, they're already the odds-on favorite. The Bucks are already a favorite as it is, even though you don't know who the third person is. So I would assume, yeah, they'd probably be the favorites to win the trios title. And you do need recognizable names as inaugural champions for any belt, because that's how you build the prestige to it. Because the way I look at it, if you just give an unknown wrestler or one of a lesser card status that hasn't gotten much of a push, and you give them that belt, I mean, it'll be hard to draw the crowd into it. That's my standpoint on it.
I mean, hence why they gave Chris Jericho the initial AEW World title. I believe they gave the Bucks the first tag title.
They gave the Bucks the first tag title. So, and they gave Riho, I believe, the first AEW women's champion.
Riho was the first women's
champion. And people may say, well, in America she may not be as known, but international audience wise, Riho is very well known. So
Riho is severely underrated in the AEW women's division. She should be she should be featured more. So
I 100% agree. I was definitely team Riho. Riho for a long time, still am. But there's so many talented women in that division, but that's definitely up for another topic. 100%.
Right. I mean, it is what it is. We'll see what happens this Wednesday, because apparently they're going to be. I don't know if they're kicking off the show or main event in the show, but it no matter what, whoever the Bucks pick as a partner is probably going to be a pretty good pick. So
I believe so. Absolutely.
So I guess we'll go to another topic. We'll switch over to WWE. This was left over from last week, and I just added a few things to it. Wrestlers returning recently: Karrion Kross, Dexter Lumis, and then Hit Row last week on SmackDown. There wasn't a return on Raw this week, but who do you think the next wrestler to return is going to be, and why do you want them to return?
Ooh. Well, okay. Excluding wrestlers that are like considered legends in WWE, because I know guys like Rob Van Dam have talked about coming back. Trish Stratus is now going to be doing house shows for WWE apparently, and
yeah, they're up in Toronto this weekend or something.
Yeah, so
and that's understandable. That's understandable.
It works perfectly. I feel that if there's any wrestler that I hope returns, I want it to be Gargano, Johnny Gargano.
I agree.
And now I was really leaning towards, Adam Cole, Bobby Fish, Kyle O'Reilly, but
they're under contract. So
they're under contracts, and on top of that, with Ciampa on Raw, Johnny Gargano. And I always struggle.
Gargano.
Yeah, it always is hard to count. It's like pronouncing Calgary, Alberta, Canada. But how the best way to put it? Basically, he's somebody who never truly got a shot on the main roster. I mean, you can say it about a lot of people, but he definitely never really got a shot on the main roster. Nowhere near what he should have. And I feel that it would be perfect because as a former NXT guy, somebody like Triple H, and then you got Shawn Michaels who sees so much in him, so much potential, so much talent, that he'd be able to succeed on the main roster when put in the right environment, which wasn't the case under Vince. What do you think, Chris?
I mean, honestly, you can kind of, it almost looks in the last couple of weeks that Triple H's former NXT stamp is starting to take on to the WWE the Raw and SmackDown. I mean, there's more matches. It's more longer matches. There, I mentioned that Drew McIntyre versus Kevin Owens Monday night seemed like it was could have been on any takeover that you ever put on, that Triple H ever put on. Am I wrong in that? Am I wrong in that thinking?
No, the way it was all set up and the way it unfolded was just textbook type NXT, old school NXT material. And you definitely know when Triple H is laying his handiwork, if you will, on the product as opposed to somebody else.
And even just that promo last night between Kevin and Drew McIntyre felt differently. You know, it felt like they basically gave them probably a outline of what they wanted or how they wanted to get there. It was up to Kevin and Drew to get there. You know,
and can I just say, for one little side note about Raw last night, really, Ezekiel and father?
Oh,
okay, that might have been like segment of the year.
That picture is gonna live in WWE infamy forever. I mean,
Ezekiel and Elias's father. That great. Just I couldn't. I could not contain, because you thought most of us thought last week was the whole end of this Ezekiel thing when Kevin Owens practically murdered him by powerbombing him onto the apron. And then next week they bring back his father.
I really thought that they were gonna like take Ezekiel off TV so they can like let him regrow his beard. I mean, but that's gonna take a long,
something like that.
Right. I mean,
his father.
and they photoshopped Elias into the picture, which was
I can't. But see, and that's the thing. I also just feel like the whole product is just so much more enjoyable. And I know there's a high spot probably that's coming up that will kind of tie into what's here right now and what we're talking about. But I just feel like more people are going to want to come back to WWE just because either they didn't get the proper chance or because they were just unhappy in general. But now the Triple H in charge, as far as creatively goes.
You just wonder if Triple H was in charge of creative maybe even 6 months ago. Would you see someone like a Claudio Castagnoli go into AEW? Would you even saw previously Adam Cole go into
AEW? That's where I had the question, and I don't know if you wanted to get to that one that I had submitted regarding, if Triple H had been in creative in the past, but there it is.
No, that's the morale.
That's the morale one.
That's the one.
There it is.
There it is.
This is the one I brought in, and it was, if Triple H had been in charge of WWE creative years ago, do you really think AEW would have been created? Because AEW was almost formed because Cody Rhodes became very unhappy in WWE. He was very underutilized, and the whole Stardust thing was just not up to his potential. And he had done so much international work and stuff in Ring of Honor, and a lot of the guys out there wanted to expand and really take it to WWE. Hence, and then you get a lifelong wrestling fan in Tony Khan to financially back it up, and look where you're at now. But would any of this have happened if Triple H was the one in charge and people were happy?
Well, the story, from what I understand, Cody Rhodes left the WWE or was released. I can't remember what one it was. He bet on himself. He bet on himself to go to Ring of Honor, New Japan. He bet on himself. Then they really bet on him. Ring of Honor really bet on him whenever they did the all-in pay-per-view.
The all-in event, yeah. The pay-per-view.
That was, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Rey Mysterio was on that pay-per-view. Yep. There was and that was the whole thing, is Ring of Honor basically kind of gave them their platform, but this was all the Bucks and Kenny, and I believe Adam had something to do with it, and Cody. And apparently, from what I understand, Tony Khan was like wanting to invest money somewhere, and Impact kind of begged him to buy Impact to, be like, hey, you could do what you want to with this. But they went off on their own, AEW wouldn't be around without Tony Khan. I think it would be around, but would you have the high level people leaving? You know what I mean?
Like, would the roster be what it is in AEW now if it were Triple H in charge? Because I think I get it, because a lot of the wrestlers, and we're not trying to say like they are a WCW, because I don't feel that AEW is what WCW was. I feel that the product is run much better. I feel that there's less of an ego situation going on behind the scenes. But anyway, to get back to what I was saying, with AEW, you look at some of the big names that had left WWE and went to AEW. And I think that's what you're getting at. If Triple H was in charge, would those names have left? And the answer to me is no. I don't think they would have left, because morale would have been more higher, and they would have been happier. I still think you would have gotten good independent names out there. I still think you would have your Christopher Daniels. You would have had Frankie Kazarian. You still would have had a lot of them.
You would still have the MJFs and the people that graduated from basically what was MLW or
right. And there's nothing wrong with that.
But if Triple H didn't have his medical problems and could have ran NXT, would Vince have stuck his nose into it if Triple H could have stayed running it?
Ooh. Vince definitely has a problem of, as much as I've praised Vince McMahon for what he's done for the industry, he definitely had a problem of not knowing when to just be like, hey, okay, I'll let you handle this. He always, and people say, well, he's the chairman, CEO. Yes, but you have employees for a reason. You have departments, you have different branches for a reason, to take responsibilities off of you so you don't have to do it. I think it shows two things. It shows Vince's love for the business, but it also shows to adapt to change. Triple H and Stephanie McMahon and Shawn Michaels, that generation that grew in the business and has seen so many things evolve, they're right to run the business now, and I think it's a shame, the circumstances regarding Vince's retirement, because we all used to say he would die running the promotion, but it's a shame of how he retired. But definitely with Triple H in charge creatively, if it were earlier, either, like you said, could have been 6 months ago, could have been 9 months ago, could have been years ago, the landscape of where we're at now would have definitely been different. Now, I got one question for you, Chris, in regards to this topic. We talk about what could have been with AEW and everything. If Triple H ran WWE creatively and whatnot, we're going to go back 8 years. All right, so we'll go 8 years. Does CM Punk stay in WWE? Because 2014 was when everything really fell apart.
It was around the time of his concussion.
Concussion, the big staph infection,
the Z-Pack to death. That that he had an accident on SmackDown, and
yep.
I don't know. I don't think so, because I think at that time CM Punk was probably just done with the business.
Understandable.
I mean, I don't know for sure.
Right.
And hindsight is 2020. So I mean,
yeah.
But at this point, would he have? I mean, would it have mattered that no matter who was in charge? I mean, at that point, Triple H wasn't really at a part to be in charge of anything because he didn't really take over NXT until a couple of years later. If I'm
Yeah, Triple H was still a very active wrestler in 2014 still. I mean, hell, it was in 2016 he won the WWE Championship in the Royal Rumble and the Royal Rumble match. So I mean, Triple H, which oh gosh forbid, but point being, Triple H was still very active on the in-ring part. But yeah, it's just interesting, and you know, you could sit here all night and do the what could have beens, and I could and like I said, I totally understand your point. You know, and I'm glad Night Owl's tuning in, and the family's tuning in. You know, there you could tell later in Punk's career before before he stepped away, you could just tell something was off. It was more of a mental thing, I believe. Like it's that passion you were talking about. You know, he just lost the love for the business, and it was just his reasons.
but you can't really get any better than that. Was it the Money in the Bank card that it was in Chicago? It was Punk.
Oh yeah,
Punk versus Cena.
One of the greatest.
I mean,
matches.
I go back and watch that match all the time, and I go back and watch it just for the reaction of the crowd whenever they're because at that time the WWE had that where they could delay things, and you know they're like they rang the bell, and then they're like stop for a minute, and then Punk's music, and it wasn't even Cult of Personality at that time. It was
still his other one.
It was still his other one, and that response. The only other response I saw on a John Cena match to that was when he wrestled Rob Van Dam at ECW's One Night Stand, and he knew he was going in there as the person to not be well liked. I mean, he was able to flip on a dime because you know Cena's one of the most popular people in the world at that point. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But he goes into ECW Arena or
the Hammerstein
Ballroom,
which is basically
ECW Arena 2.
Right.
He was going in there as a hated person. You kind of almost, if it was the older days, you would have feared for his life.
I feel like even in 2006, he still kind of did. I mean, the thing of it is, Chicago electric.
Mm-hmm.
ECW's crowd was hostile. There is a difference.
Right. Yes.
That's how I look at it. The Chicago crowd for Money in the Bank was electric from start to finish. But the ECW crowd, you know, in Hammerstein Ballroom they were electric and everything. But if one of them could jump the barricade, Cena, I mean, obviously Cena would have kicked their ass, but I mean, he would have at least been attacked because they had it out for Cena.
And then the ending of that match was just great. Is like, you know, Punk wins. You know, he's cheering on with he's in the ring. Vince is down. You know, Vince tried to do the screw job. You know, they tried to replay the screw job. We all know that
Money in the Bank and like with Del
Rio, and he just jumped the fence and celebrated with his people. So you said that the morale in the WWE is the highest that it's probably been in years.
Yeah.
Does Tony Khan need to do anything to respond?
Yeah, he needs to lay off the Fun Dip sugar. I've said this before.
He said Fun Dip sugar.
Let me tell you something. I have said this on Roundabout Sports multiple times. I'm going to say it here. Tony Khan is literally the guy like the stuff in the Fun Dip. He doesn't even use the stick, dip it, and eat it. No, he just lays it all out and snorts it like it's some fresh Coke.
God, can we just say so the lawyers of the Wrestle Talk podcast doesn't come back to us and be like, did you just accuse Tony Khan of doing?
Yeah, I'm not accusing him of being a. I'm not accusing him of being a druggie. I promise that is not my message here. But what I'm trying to get across is Tony Khan needs to just tone it down a little bit. I mean, this guy, I saw him at Shea Fits, and Chris, I believe you were there too.
I was there. I was there with
You every
I was there
5
with I was there.
minutes.
I was there with the great Christopher Miles and a couple of other friends from the wrestling group that we're in, and it looked like he would do key bumps before he came out, allegedly. I'm trying not to get the Wrestle Talk podcast in trouble, so I'm going to put allegedly in front of everything.
Yeah,
so,
we're gonna put allegedly, and you know what? If
he has a
you
lot
said
of.
I'm the controversial one, so I'll have to take the heat for it. Whatever. Hey, in the words of Bischoff, controversy creates cash, so we'll take what we can get right now. But no, like that's the thing with Tony. I feel like okay, like I said earlier, he is a lifelong wrestling fan, which is great. But at some point, you also have to understand that if you're running AEW,
It's a business.
you need to be a businessman too. This is where I give Vince, and I'm gonna go back to Vince while sticking with Tony on this. This is where I do give Vince his credit. The way he was brought up in the business was by doing stuff in the business, by working. His father made him work. Like he didn't just get handed the company one day. And Vince knew that he was not only a fan of this product, but the ins and outs of the business aspect. Like that's why when some of the guys sold their territories, the Vince gave them lifetime contracts with WWE, like Gorilla Monsoon, for example. Perfect example. It's like, here, you sell this share in this or whatnot. We'll give you a lifetime contract. You'll never have to leave WWE again. Tony is more like a teenager and that is just around wrestlers.
I mean, it's almost. I kind of reckon it back to the Eric Bischoff days of ECW, WCW, that he would try to pick up every WWE, WWF cast, person that didn't re-sign or anything. Nash, Hall, and X-Pac, and Ted DiBiase, Mr. Perfect. I mean, anyway, and it worked at the time. He had Ted Turner money behind him. Tony Khan has Tony Khan money behind him. Tony Khan has Shad Khan money.
Shad Khan, yeah, I was gonna say his dad. Let's not underestimate how big rich his dad is. Woo.
I mean, Tony Khan's got Jacksonville Jaguars NFL money behind him. So I mean,
yeah. Which shows that, making smart financial decisions isn't always the best thing in the family, but that's beside the point.
And Shad Khan, I just want to say, I'm still bitter about it. Shad Khan got screwed by Stan Kroenke. Shad Khan actually put in a bid for the St. Louis Rams because he did.
Shad Khan wanted.
Wasn't he? He was one of the minority owners, I believe, of the Rams as well.
Yeah,
and Stan Kroenke was actually had the right of first refusal. So at the very last minute, Stan Kroenke put in his bid, and you see where that ended up. But we're not a football podcast, and and it seems like it's upsetting Jeremy right now.
No, I really wish this was a big.
Well, and it doesn't really make you mad that Stan Kroenke, the Rams actually won the Super Bowl, and
I'm happy for some of those players because they played the same.
Aaron Donald,
Johnny Hecker, Rob Havenstein, yeah, those guys. But everybody else can.
But then
run off.
The goddamn Colorado Avalanche won the fucking Stanley Cup.
That's how I look at it.
And honestly, I have one of my best friends is a Colorado Avalanche fan, has been for years. Used to give me trouble because the Colorado Avalanche had 2 Stanley Cups and the Blues didn't have any. I was able to rub it in his face in 2019, which he was actually happy for me. And I was happy for him because he actually got to literally see one that that he could actually be a part of and be happy about. So I'm happy for him. But it's Stan Kroenke,
right?
And didn't their lacrosse team or something like there's another team that he owns, like a minor share and won a title. So
yeah, and Haas is pointing out, yes, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, and I'll tell you this. Championships may have been a while ago, but they still count as championships.
Do they really
they-
though?
well, let's put it this way: people always, and then we'll get back on topic after I say this. People always talk about how the Cubs didn't win a World Series since 1908, but guess what? That they still counted it as a World Series. So if we can count a World Series in 68 or in 1908, we can count a championship in 64. Damn it! But that's neither here nor there. Haas is a Raiders fan, so
I mean, you could kind of drop the mic at that point where you're like Haas is a Raiders fan. I mean,
yeah. But and thankfully Tony Khan isn't. But this is my thing about with Tony Khan.
Tony Khan owns the Jacksonville, is part owner in the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's a whole other mess.
I might have wanted to be a Raiders fan then. Anyway,
but it gave them. But honestly, during the whole pandemic, it gave them their place that they could actually do their shows and still put TV shows out.
And that is one thing I give AEW a pro. Now, see here, take it. Let's look at WrestleMania 36, which I thought, for the circumstances, very, very good WrestleMania. But notice there was literally nobody in attendance. But then you got AEW, which was able to still have a limited amount of fans at oh god, what was it, Daly's Place?
Daly's Place, I believe. Daly's Place, yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically the amphitheater that was on the same grounds as where the Jacksonville Jaguars play.
Right,
so,
and it's a great home for the.
It worked out. It worked out perfectly. They couldn't have people. They couldn't have actually physically people there. They had their roster at ringside.
Right.
I mean, and
it was a big environment, so it made it feel more. It made it feel bigger. That's the thing. When it was WWE, they were so confined, and you only had maybe 5 NXT wrestlers hitting that plexiglass. But in AEW, you had the big arena, and you had rostered wrestlers everywhere, and it was a much better thing. So, but with Tony Khan, with what's going on in that locker room right now, there are people that have been butting heads, and I think it is in response to. And good evening, Herb Simmons, ladies and gentlemen, one of the absolute greatest in the professional wrestling industry. Always a pleasure to have him on as a guest.
I know you saw that picture of Curtis Wilde in the chat that from his war wounds with Attila Khan. I mean,
I can't even believe that. How? Just how? Did you not see how deep that cut was?
Right. I mean, how is he still moving the next day? So, and Haas brings up that
I'll tell you what, I'm guessing that happened in Illinois.
Yes, that was in Illinois.
Because I'll tell you, sure as hell ain't gonna happen in Missouri.
No. I mean, Missouri. This past week was MMWA in St. Louis and WLW down in Troy, Missouri.
Yep, and I heard great things from both shows.
And MMWA announced that they're going to, quote, bring back their MMWA women's title. They're going to have they're going to have a tournament next month, and they're bringing in some people from the Kansas area.
September 10th, I believe. So.
Yes, September 10th at the South Broadway Athletic Club. SICW will also be running shows around that time. So, but they're bringing in a couple of Kansas people that wrestle in the Kansas area that Renee would probably know. The names escape me because I wasn't part of the show this past week. So,
well, and let me tell you, folks, just like Chris and Big Sexy and I are so involved with the work out here in the St. Louis scene, you got guys like the Night Owl and Sonny Money Mayo who are so involved in wrestling out in the Kansas City area and just in the whole KC area in general. And it's wonderful.
And from what I understand, UUCW, they did their show this past week with Ray Leone and Mike Seidel.
No way. Nick Aldis and Attila Khan. Oh, here we go. And Renee.
Yes, one of them is Stormy Renee. The name escaped me for a second, so she's going to be a part of the MMWA women's tournament So
I know Ashton Alexander is going to be
Matty Exodus,
Matty Exodus,
Riley Knox. There's
Riley Knox.
there's a mystery person that they're not going to name until then. So that's I mean St. Louis and Kansas, but anyway, Ray Leone has been a guest. Mike Seidel was a guest last week. Matt Seidel. Oh God, I did the same thing Renee did. I called him Matt, or I called him Mike, and it's Matt Seidel that was a guest. So
it was Ezekiel.
I've worked with both of them. They're both great guys. So anyway, so we're gonna keep rolling on high spots. I mean,
absolutely, we're having it's a great time
because our first guest has not joined us yet. So, but you know what? We're gonna keep on rolling. What else do I got? Oh, well, I want your opinion on this. Did you watch Ric Flair's last match?
You already know I did, and what's funny is you and I have the complete, to an extent, opposite opinions of the match.
It was terrible.
You thought it was terrible.
It was terrible.
I thought I was enamored in the nostalgia. Now, if we're talking like, well, technically, so was Hogan Andre. That match was terrible too. But I understand where you're getting at. Yes. As far as quality goes, it was bad. And I will.
Renee admitting that he called Mike 8 times. So
does that mean you're gonna have a Matt's Hard Lemonade?
Oh no. But apparently that match really was probably one of the best matches in a while. So.
But yeah, Ric Flair's last match. So he wished he didn't say that was his last match. You know what? I wish that when he said it was done in 2008, it was. Because you want to know why? And I know you'll agree with this. And I definitely want to hear your opinion on this. So I showed Mom some of Ric Flair's last match. I showed her a couple pictures from it as well. And she goes, well, no, I was showing her the end of Ric Flair's last match. And she was like, wait, he's still wrestling? And we met him back in January when the Royal Rumble was in St. Louis. And, she got to meet him on a plane and back in the 70s on its way to, I believe, South Carolina or North Carolina, one of the two. I think Charlotte. So anyway, she was like, didn't he retire years ago? I was like, yeah, well, he decided to come back.
He's retired a couple of times.
Yeah, but we both remember. I mean, of course I remember, but she remembers. We were watching the night after WrestleMania back in 2008 when they had the huge Ric Flair retirement. Everybody came out. Harley Race, The Horseman, Ricky Steamboat, Batista, Jericho. Everybody came out. Greg the Hammer. And that was the perfect send-off because that was one of the greatest matches in history, especially in WrestleMania history.
That was the best. That was the best match Ric Flair has wrestled in probably
20?
Nah, I wouldn't go that far because he was pretty good for a while. But
10.
That I would give you 10. That iconic moment of Shawn Michaels setting up for the super kick and him saying, I'm sorry, I love you.
And then
put him out like old Yeller.
Old Yeller. And Flair's up here just crying like, come on, you son of a bitch. I'm going. I'm still fighting.
Right. Oh. I mean, that would have been the perfect moment to go away.
Yes. But it needs to end. It needs to because he has had so many health issues in relation to his nature boy lifestyle, all the drinking, all the partying, and
dude has a pacemaker in him.
He has a pacemaker.
He should have been wrestling. He passed out. Apparently, he passed out twice.
Look, we had talked about this with referee H.D. Daniels and referee Christopher Miles, and we talked about, look, Flair always talked about dying in the ring. I didn't mean it to be literal. I mean, I don't want to physically see that happen.
apparently
almost did.
Apparently, Undertaker was pretty scared about, he was kind of caught whispering to him, is like, don't do that again.
That's what I was saying. I said that too when Mom saw like the Undertaker whispering in his ear. I said, you know what I bet he's saying? He's like, Rick, I love you, but don't do this shit ever again, please. Like, and you know what? I'm all for that. Look, Ric Flair says he wish he didn't say it was. I wish that it is his last match, because you know what? Once again, I'm going to go to the nostalgia factor. The old NWA setup. You had the old school announce team of David Crockett and Tony Schiavone.
I did love the old school setup with the old school like World Championship Wrestling.
Yes.
Backstage area, right? Yeah. And they incorporated the guys from each of the promotions too. So
so the event as a whole was actually a really good event. But the main event, which I'm gonna just tell you, if the Wrestling Observer newsletter does the worst worked match of the year every year, if that is on there as the worst match, I'm not gonna be surprised.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's the worst match because they had enough people with Andrade and Jay Lethal to, and honestly, where Ric Flair didn't look like he just belonged in the ring, Jeff Jarrett, on the other hand, dude was jacked. Jeff Jarrett was in great shape.
Yeah, the fact Jeff Jarrett has not done as much wrestling lately. But
if you think about that match,
he's also a producer. All right, go ahead.
If you think about that match, you had a WWE producer, or their live events producer, who refereed a match at SummerSlam the night before, teaming with a Ring of Honor AEW guy against Ric Flair, which he's not really affiliated, against an AEW guy. You had AEW, Ring of Honor, and WWE all represented in that ring.
With a guy that's wrestled for pretty much every promotion that's ever existed.
Using Jeff Jarrett's Impact theme, his TNA theme, his My World theme, which I believe the WWE should buy from whoever owns it, because
that is true.
I don't want
that whole thing.
I don't want that Double J theme. I just, it doesn't fit him anymore. So
yeah, but you know what? The quick side note, while before we get back on this topic, you want to know one of my favorite Impact themes? Hardcore Country.
That was cool. That was kind of cool to hear here in St. Louis, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. When I heard that, the Rumble and everything, was like, Hardcore Country. I was like, oh my God, what? So
I guess we could talk about a little bit from what's going on in the St. Louis area here, because we got a couple of big events coming, national events coming to St. Louis here in the coming months. At the
NWA
74. Let's talk about it. Are you going?
As of now, I am still working on that. I have a couple events with some friends, and we're working on trying to schedule something out to where we can go. I know it's I believe it is on the 27th and 28th. So
27th and 28th. That's 28th. My birthday is the 29th. So that's how.
There you go.
And that's how it was last year. It was on my birthday weekend last year. 73 was on my birthday weekend. But not only is there
matches scheduled already.
Over 2 days, yes, there is 2 days. They've got they're bringing back the United States tag titles, if I'm not mistaken.
Bring back the United. It's a tag team battle royal for the vacant NWA United States Tag Team Championship.
I am pulling it up right now just to make sure that we're night one has Camille versus Taya for the NWA Women's World Championship. Homicide versus Kerry Morton.
I'm excited for that one.
Couple of other big, Bully Ray and Mike Knox in a tables match. Then
you got Jax Dane versus
and the first night. The first night has the Burke Invitational Gauntlet, and St. Louis's favorite Tootie Lynn is in that match.
Very true.
You said Jax Dane. Is that who you were looking for?
Yeah, Jax Dane's going to be wrestling for the NWA National Heavyweight Championship.
He's taking on Scion.
Yeah, he's going to be taking on Scion.
And then And then night 2, you got Trevor Murdoch and Tyrus is going to be for the World Heavyweight Championship. And then you got your Gold Rush match, which has or Gold Rush versus the Miserably Faithful. That's kind of a great name. The Ill Begotten, Rough and Ready, Hawks Airy, the Country Gentlemen, our friends at Team Ambition, and then there's going to be another team that's going to be announced. So, and then the winner of either Camille or Taya Valkyrie is going to take on the winner of the Burke Invitational. So,
yeah, and you know what's interesting is last year at the NWA show when they had the Trevor Murdoch winning the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, Ric Flair coming out there and congratulating him. The whole moment of that happening, like it was just heartwarming because there was so much. It definitely felt like, especially when I went to the show last year at NWA 73, it was back in the Chase, just like wrestling at the Chase was. It was in the ballroom, in the famous ballroom where the shows used to be held. And you had people there in suits and ties, just like they used to be back in the day. And there was this whole old school feeling to it. And it's so great seeing the NWA get revitalized with some old school talent and talent that has been in that's still fresh in the industry.
They're trying to weave in the past and the present. So
yeah, and I think the NWA, which now being its own promotion as opposed to a governing body, I think they've done really good so far. And like I said, Trevor Murdoch is a great champion to have. And I remember it was a title versus career match with Trevor Murdoch and Nick Aldis. And the crowd just erupted when Murdoch won.
Well, I mean, because Murdoch has a whole tie to the area. He's a Harley guy. He's a Harley guy from WLW. I seen Trevor Murdoch wrestle on WLW shows.
Yep, same here. And and the bond he had. I mean, he was the one who, kept people updated on Harley's health at near the end of his life. And because it was just that it was almost like a father-son bond. He was family to Leland and Harley and the rest of the family. And so he, with that, brings ties to the region, and with that was definitely somebody to get behind. It was a great show. I'm looking forward to NWA 74 one way or another. I'm really hoping that I will be able to make it to either one or both of the nights.
And then it was just announced this past week that SmackDown is making its first return since, I believe, what was it? Did I see 2018? I think maybe SmackDown live taping. I saw that. What did I see? Man, I should write this stuff down.
I was gonna say Raw was only here about a year. Was it either last year or probably was here.
But they're coming at the end of October, and they're gonna do their taping. So I mean, for the area, that's kind of cool. I mean, there's a lot of talk about Missouri wrestling and the Missouri State Athletic Commission, and I don't know if I really want to get into that.
You know what? I do, but not to the extent in which I know I'll get into it on Roundabout Sports, because I know there is a lot of controversy, but it needs to be, especially we're the Wrestle Talk podcast, for crying out loud. We have to address this situation. So recently I came across a petition that was filed on change.org in regards to basically going after the Missouri State Athletic Commission, which oversees all these types of wrestling events, MMA events, boxing matches, all these types of specialty events, and they, you put it mildly, thanks to taxes and just overall stupidity, wrestling promotions aren't making money that they should be, deservedly so. Unfortunately.
So,
But for a guy that's been in the industry a lot longer
Okay.
than I have, I definitely want your opinion on, and we've experienced it firsthand, and we
right.
know people that have experienced it even worse than we have. So, what is your take on just the new rules regarding how much money gets taken out of a show that a promoter puts on?
Okay. So, I disagree with the change.org petition. That's why I didn't sign it, because
Right.
it's not because I don't agree with it completely. It's because I don't agree with it completely. Because the commission, the state athletic commission, does a good thing. It basically keeps promoters that shouldn't be running shows out of Missouri, because you have to get a promoter's license, you have to get a bond, you have to file for a permit for every show. All the wrestlers have to be licensed, blood work. That part of it, I have absolutely no problem with.
Right.
I don't necessarily have a problem with them taking a percentage of the gate, because it's we live in a tax world. You know what I mean? I know. I don't agree with the extra that they added on this last, I guess, when the renewal process came apart, because they're only doing it for one reason. Well, two reasons, I should say. One, the Missouri State Department of Athletics is not part of the Missouri Department of Registration's budget. So the department gets absolutely zero state funds. And that is a problem that should be taken up with the state legislature.
Yeah.
And not have it be taken out on anybody else. Okay? Two, in 2020 and 2021, what was going on? We were in a pandemic. Vince didn't come to town. Tony was starting, and he didn't come to town. And I've been told on a good source that one Vince show during the year paid for the budget of the Department of Athletics for the full year. Now, can I be for sure on that? Yes. Would I love to talk to Tim Lukinoff and get his understanding about how this goes? Maybe sometime down the road. Maybe that's something you could do on the on Roundabout Sports. I don't know. I don't know if he'd be willing to talk about it, because this is the one thing that unites promoters. They're paying. You have to pay $1, not just the tax. It's a percentage of the tax. It's whatever county that you're in of the gate, which is, I guess it's fine. It is what it is. It's part of doing business. It's a tax. But you have to pay just not only that tax, you have to pay a surcharge, $1 surcharge on every person that is in that building. And that's not just necessarily just the people that pay. You have to pay it on people that let's say you would give 10 comps to a special needs home, and you want them to come to the show so they can enjoy themselves as a special outing. You would have to pay $1 for each of those people. You would have to pay $1, and apparently you have to pay $1 for just anyone that just might be watching the show that's not part of the venue or your company. That's the part I have a problem with. And it was never like debated, or you couldn't put it. It was just kind of one of those things that all of a sudden one day a letter went out to all of the people in the world, or all the promoters, and be like, hey, and I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to get myself into trouble, but That's the part I have a problem with. Because
Yeah.
because what do you do if you're doing a show that you're outdoors and you're at like our show at Gateway Harley Davidson, could you technically be like, anyone that drives down the road, they might have glimpsed the show. Do we have to pay for them? You don't have to, because it's someone that had to be physically in the area of the show, apparently, and that's still up in the air. So, but the problem is, it was never debated. There was never a chance for the public to enter in a public comment on it, like most things in the state of Missouri do, most things nationwide do. So that's my problem.
And see, that's where I definitely agree with you on the matter, because I think one of the biggest issues, I mean, obviously the whole thing about taking out a dollar on every person within the vicinity, basically, in attendance. But I think it is the fact that this was never brought up to a debate. The fact that it was never held in a public forum of, and obviously I know most, if not all, promoters would be like, hell no, we do not want this happening. But the fact they didn't get a choice, you just found out, while you're about to host a show, be like, hey, by the way, we got to count every single person who's in this building, because that we got to take $1 from all that, and some promoters, I'm trying to think of how to word this. Some promoters draw good crowds at every show. Others struggle to. Doesn't mean the product's not good. It's just how wrestling is, especially when you're in like St. Louis and Kansas City, where the markets are very saturated with promotions.
Right.
And so they're all fighting for the same audience. So honestly, it's even more of a reason where the promoters need to work together, because it's almost like they're fighting for their dreams. And you had mentioned about having Tim Lukanoff in an interview, and that is something I'm going to try to get down the road. I've already, it's been brought to my attention of how it could go, but that's something down the road, and we'll see what happens. But I do believe it's a situation that deserves answers, and I feel like I understand why they are, there's wrestlers and people in the industry who are putting out that petition, and I respect the fact they are doing it. But I understand why some would not want to sign it, as well as why they do. See, the athletic commission is necessary. I
Yes.
think, we need the Missouri State Athletic Commission, but what we don't need is them overstepping there. But that is the root thing for me. I feel like every state should have a commission like Missouri does, but
and the problem is the wrestling promotion, the promoter's license, not the promoter's license, the permit fee for a wrestling show is like 10 times more than an MMWA or amateur boxing show,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And say a wrestling show will draw, maybe 100 people, that's $1 per person. Then you have the people that are working the venue for concessions and things of that nature. Then you mentioned the comp tickets, all that adds up, and the amount of work that goes into putting together a show, for the sake of a promoter, not only is it a lot financially, it's just a lot physically and mentally. It takes a lot to put together a wrestling show.
Right. I mean, because you have to putting together a wrestling show, you think it'd be, it'd be easy. You book a venue, you have your ring, you have your lighting, you have your concessions, or if the venue is doing concessions, that kind of stuff. But it's not just that. You have to put together who you want to have on the show, because I mean, you don't want just anybody on the show. You want you want a variety of people on the show. You have to put what match order you're going to have on there, and you have to get there. And you've been there on show days, a show day is really, honestly, it's not just the 3 hours that you're at the show.
It goes beyond that.
It goes beyond that.
Before and after the show.
Right. Before and after the show. It's like you're there at if you have a 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock show, you're probably there at 8 o'clock. You probably, if you could get into the building the night before, you were at least able to set up the ring and get the barricades up and everything. But you still have to set up the chairs. You still have to set up the merch table. You still have to set up the production. You still have to set up the sound. You have to set up the trussing. You have to set up everything. Not including making sure everyone shows up to the show, because show days, someone has car problems or
something comes up
or sick. I mean, it happened. I mean, everyone gets sick.
Absolutely. So things change on the fly, and that's why you have to start setting things up early, because you can't just say a show starts at 6, for example. You can't wait till 5:45 and be like, okay, well, you're in this match instead because this person can't show. That's not how it works. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. There's shows that say they end at 10. We've done shows that end at 10.
Right.
We may not get home till after midnight because there's just so much work.
Well, because after the show, people want to linger around. They want to talk to the wrestlers. They want, doing an independent show is different than doing a WWE show. WWE people, they just leave, at show's over, they leave, wrestlers are backstage. Independent shows are different because the people come out, the wrestlers come out, they talk to their fans, they take pictures. You have to put up all the chairs. You have to take down the trussing. You have to tear down the production equipment. You have to tear down the sound. You have to tear down the ring. You have to load the ring on the trailer, and then the people that drive the trailer, they have to drop it off at wherever it's going, whether it be the Dynamo Pro Dojo or other shows. They keep it they keep it at their house.
Exactly.
It's not just that 3-hour escape from reality that you get when you're running a promotion and you're running a show. You have the beginning, the middle, and the end.
And on top of all of that, I think, obviously, and even when you talk about the escape from reality, that's just the audience. Because even backstage, there's still so much work that goes on. And all the while, you are being watched by the Missouri State Athletic Commission. There is somebody there that is making sure everything is in working order.
He's there before, he's there a couple hours before the show to make sure everyone's got their license. He's got a list that has the licensing that'd be like, okay, this person, because you have to get all your documentation in. You can pay for your license the day of the show, but you have to have all your documentation in several days prior to the show. So the inspector gets a list and is like, this person is okay, this person's okay, this person just needs to pay, that kind of stuff.
Right. So, like I said, I think the petition, the change.org petition is good-hearted in the sense of where they're coming from on it. But I do believe there is a different aspect that needs to be changed. It's not about dissolving. It's about, I guess, evolving or adapting. Like I said, the key thing here is not about dissolving the athletic association.
No, absolutely not, because that would be the biggest mistake Missouri would ever do, is that they dissolved it. One, the state needs to fund it. I don't care if it's like $100, whatever. You need to fund it. The state needs to fund it. It needs to be talked about on the legislature floor as part of the budget process, because it's inconceivable that a government entity is not funded.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that it isn't. And on top of that, the biggest issue, say the commission or the athletic commission gets dissolved, what happens is the health of, and we know the health of the wrestlers and everybody involved at risk whenever you have a show in general. But we're talking like really health of the wrestlers is getting. I cannot express. You ask certain people within the industry and they will tell you the difference between wrestling in states across the country as far as regulations go. There's a reason not every state you can pile drive somebody through a flaming table. There is a damn good reason why. Don't get me wrong, like some extreme deathmatch wrestling is entertaining to watch every once in a while, but at the same time, there's a reason it's not everywhere. So that's all I got.
All right, Jeremy. So we're actually gonna take a pause for the cause.
Works for me.
We were supposed to have a snippets of truth segment, but he's not here. So we do have our second guest in the green room, so we're good on that. But we're gonna take us a short little break. I'm gonna play a song. I'm gonna take Maestro off here, and then I'm gonna take myself. Bear with me. I'm working. First time I'm working on this, so I'm gonna put up the logo, and I'm gonna play a song, and we're gonna be back here in just a few minutes, about 3 minutes or so, and we will take care of that. So we will see you here in just a few minutes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here at the Wrestle Talk Podcast. Let me take that off of there. We can bring us back in. My name is Road Dog Chris Rodell with the one and only the Meister Jeremy Carp. First hour, basically did an extended high spot segment, and we had some good conversations about the world of professional wrestling, and I think things have gone pretty well considering. But you know what?
Nothing wrong with it. We did.
You know what? It's live. What can you expect, right?
Right. You know what? That's the best part, though. We adapted, and we have ourselves our amazing second guest. And
but before we get to the second guest, let's we wouldn't be here without our sponsors. So I'm gonna throw this up here. You want to take care of this again for me?
Yeah, why not?
All
right, we got to
thank you. Good job the first time.
Yeah, why not? I love it so nice. You do it twice. Well, Royal Mills Transportation, Dewan Mills, Wrath Buns Engraving. If you want a mug of the Wrestle Talk Podcast, it only costs you just $20 measly, and gas is going down, so that always helps. Nobleman's Barber Lounge in Kansas City, Missouri. All you gotta do is ask for Pete the Barber. Kincaid Arcade. Look at that beautiful mug. And at the Oak Park Mall is Kincaid Arcade. Everything Combat with Pat Militek and Jeffrey Wilson. Interstate 70 Sports Media, yours truly, along with my amazing team members. And, of course, the world's premier fantasy wrestling group, often imitated, never duplicated, the FWWC.
Oh, man, I tell you, that FWWC, we weren't able.
They don't mess around.
No,
man.
they don't. They don't play. They are the top level. So we've had some great wrestling talk, but you know what? The wrestling talk doesn't stop here on Wrestle Talk Podcast because our second guest this week, he's written several books. The first one of them, Lance by Chance. Wrestling as a Von Erich, the story of Lance Von Erich, and he's got a new book, Wrestleville Volume 1, that is out now or is going to be out soon. So it is my pleasure to welcome to the Wrestle Talk Podcast the one and only Vinny Barry.
How's it going, Vinny?
It is going great. How
Awesome.
are you guys?
It's such a pleasure to have you on this evening. Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Vinny, welcome back. I should say welcome back to the Wrestle Talk Podcast.
It's great.
We hope that we're so happy that you came back. I want to delve in because I wasn't a part of the interview the first time. Whenever you did the interview about the book Lance by Chance, Wrestling as a Von Erich. How did that book come about? And two, just tell us a little backstory on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Dallas, outside of Dallas, and I grew up during, what I would call the hot, the hotbed time of world-class championship wrestling. You know, when the wrestling was really on fire up there in the mid 80s, early
Von Erichs and Freebirds.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And so, I moved to South Texas and I started covering some boxing and MMA, and I did that for about 5 or 6 years. I worked for a MMA promoter, and I ended up becoming his matchmaker. And what happened was I was covering boxing and MMA all over the state of Texas. And because I knew all these fighters, I ended up becoming the matchmaker, because we'd say like 3 days before a big fight or something, or a big event, my promoter would call me and say, hey, you're going to have to write something. Somebody fell out of the fight. We're going to have to scratch that fight. And I said, well, why don't you call this guy? And who's this guy? And they said, well, he's ranked number 4 in the state. So, you should give him a call and see if he'll take the fight. And so, this happened several times, and he was somewhere along the line, he was like, dude, why aren't you my matchmaker? So I worked for him and was writing. But when that came to an end, the combative sports kind of dried up down here in South Texas there for a while. And I wanted to write. And so I started a website called wrestleville.com. And my wife really didn't care what I did as long as I, kind of drove my own car, so to speak. So I got my own website. I started writing about wrestling. I had some wrestling contacts, started writing about wrestlers, and had some, I was writing stories, putting them on wrestleville.com. And somewhere along the line, I believe it was James Beard that I was talking to. He's a referee, been a referee since the 80s, right? And very well known here in Texas. And he has a pretty strong background in Japan and in the NWA as well. Anyway, I was talking to him. He used to work up in World Class. And Lance would come up in our conversations. I said, that guy would have that guy's gotta have an amazing story, And one day we had that conversation again, and he just said, hey, if you want to get in contact with him, this is how you do it. So I reached out to him, and Lance was like that, man. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I reach out to wrestlers to interview them or to talk to them, and don't get a response for quite some time or never, right? And Lance was like the next day, maybe even later that day, and we set up a time to talk like for the next day.
So at that time in World Class, they had gone through so many tragedies with the deaths of Kerry and Kevin, or not Kevin, Kerry and David, Mike and David. What drew World Class to Lance Von Erich, or the guy that we know as Lance Von Erich?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question, and a lot of people think that he was brought in because of Mike Von Erich. When Mike Von Erich had his shoulder injury and he had the toxic shock syndrome, what happened was David Von Erich died in Japan, and about that was what, February? Well, that was February of '84. David Von Erich died. In the summer of '84, David Manning's on a golf course, and Lance is out there with his fiance and father-in-law, or father-in-law to be, and he just got done with a bodybuilding competition. He was wearing a tank top and shorts, and he was cut, and he looked like $1 million, and David Manning couldn't take his eye off him, man, because he looked like a professional wrestler. He had a body like Kerry, and so he just ended up approaching him and said, hey, man, have you ever thought about wrestling, professional wrestling? He was like, no, never. Crossed his mind, and so he said, well, I think you can make a lot of money doing that. And he came down, he talked to Fritz. Fritz said, hey, this is the idea we have for you. We may or may not put the Von Erich name on you, but we want to bring you into professional wrestling. Well, he didn't know how to wrestle. And back then, TV wasn't like it was, right? Wasn't, the regional TV. And that's how they made their money off regional wrestling, right? So you could go to all these different territories. Well, they set him up to Portland, and he wrestled with Don Owen, and Don Owen just put the name Ricky Vaughn on him. So
you mean like Ricky Vaughn, the player, the pitcher from the major league? So did the Von Erich family, when he came back to World Class, did they accept him in, or were they like what was that? What was that? I mean, that dynamic probably had to be kind of weird. I mean,
well, Kerry was always cool with him. Kerry was always cool with him. What happened was, and I'll give you just a little backstory. After, after he agreed to, I'll try this wrestling thing. Right before they sent him to Portland, he'd come down there for a couple weeks. He'd train with some of the guys. They put him under a mask, I think twice. He wrestled Jake the Snake twice under a mask. He doesn't remember what they called him. Nobody could remember what they called him, but it was like a purple mask or something. So
Mr. X.
Yeah, maybe something like that, right? And they would bring him down to the sportatorium, and he would get in the ring with Buddy Roberts or maybe Iceman, Brian Adidas. And on those days, every once in a while, Kevin and Kerry would come down there, and he kind of expect that maybe they were, because they weren't there very long, and it was like on the day that they got paid. So he just expected that, or assumed that they were getting their paycheck. But Kerry and Kevin would come in to the arena floor of the sportatorium. Kerry would come to the ring and say, "Hey man, you're doing good. Keep up the good work. That's how you do it, buddy." And Kevin was a little more standoff than that, so Kevin never really accepted him in that role. Now, if you see him on TV, oh my gosh, I mean, they play the role very well, but it wasn't that harmonious in real life.
If I remember right, he played the cousin, right? It was a cousin.
Yes.
Not a brother, but it was a cousin, right?
Right. Cousin. He was the cousin of the brother of Fritz, Waldo.
Gotcha. The air quotes are really flowing here tonight. So
Fritz had Waldo, and Waldo had Lance, and then everyone's cousin.
Right. Well, everybody gives Lance a hard time because he's the fake Von Erich. Nobody calls Waldo the fake Von Erich.
Yeah, nobody goes out against Waldo. What the hell? Why give Lance all the crap?
And did the crowds accept Lance? The crowds, if I remember right, watching documentaries, I've watched a couple of I watched the WWE documentary, and I've also watched the unauthorized documentary. Did the crowds accept Lance Von Erich as a Von Erich, or
they did? No, they did. They did. I think maybe in the back of their minds, they might have had this thought that, is he really? But the Von Erichs could go back then. They could tell you that the sky was purple and people would buy it.
Right. Yeah. The Von Erichs could probably do no wrong in Dallas at that time. So
right. And let me tell you, I lived there, and I was following wrestling then, and people were all over that young man. They said he was a Von Erich, and we supported him like he was Von Erich,
Right. All right, Maestro, take it over. Take it over for a couple of questions.
All right, no problem at all. So, Vinny, I got to ask you, where did this whole passion for wrestling begin? Was it beyond, like, how far deep in your family did professional wrestling fandom go?
It started with me.
It started with you?
Yeah.
Well, how's that now that kind of leads into my next question it started with you. So when you started writing for wrestling magazines and you started your own website and you became more involved in the industry, how did those in your family react? What are they like? Wait, you're involved with wrestling?
Well, a lot of my family, they know that I write, and they knew that I like wrestling, so it wasn't really a stretch for them. The joke is, when people say, "Hey, did you know Vinny wrote a book?" and someone will say, "No, I didn't know. What did you write?" I said, "Well, somebody's got to write about the real important stuff of this world, and then I tell them I write about pro wrestling, and of course they get a kick out of it, right? But
oh yeah,
it's good stuff. And you know what? If you follow wrestling, you like wrestling, you know what wrestling is. It's easy to get wrapped up in wrestling, as you guys know.
Yes, it absolutely is. And so what happened? We're gonna fast forward a little bit.
Yeah.
Back on CCW. What started to happen to Lance Von Erich when WCCW started to kind of fade away? Because the real life deaths of some of the Von Erich brothers, like David, Mike, Kerry, and even Chris, along with Fritz's health issues, along with the rise of the WWF, really started to bring on the end of WCCW, unfortunately.
Sure. Well, yeah, and I think you brought up a very good point. I think, again, I kind of withdrew from wrestling in the Dallas, the world class wrestling after Mike's death. I started kind of to lose interest. I lived about 10 miles from the Von Erichs. Okay. So,
Oh, wow.
Having a Von Erich sighting, yeah, we didn't have them every day, mind you, but, to see Kevin pumping gas or someone eating breakfast or someone at the beer store or something like that. I mean, it happened, And so if it wasn't by us, it was our friends, right? Because I mean, they live so close. So we were connected to the Von Erich family. I mean, it was like, they were ours, and so when David died and then Mike died, and it was like we knew him. I mean, heck, when I found out David died in Japan, I cried, and I didn't know these people personally, but I had this emotional connection to them, right? So it was, yeah, I think, but a lot of people did that. A lot of people kind of withdrew from the wrestling about the same time I did.
Those funerals, I mean, you see footage on documentaries that those funerals, the streets were lined with people to watch the hearse go by of Mike and and Dave coming back from Japan. So I mean, those were big events down in Texas.
Absolutely.
So that also, you bring, and I'm glad Chris brought this up about big events, and Vinny, I'm glad you mentioned how for a big city, it was still such a close-knit family, with you living just 10 miles from the Von Erich, so seeing them wasn't anything out of the ordinary. So you flash forward to when, after David's death, at, I believe, Veterans Stadium was where they had the match where Kerry Von Erich defeated Ric Flair to win the NWA World Title. My question for you is, we know what the crowd was like. The crowd was absolutely electric when Kerry won that match. But just for Andy, how did it feel, given the circumstances following, like, David's death, but knowing that there's a Von Erich now on top of basically what was considered the wrestling world? I mean, he's holding the NWA World Title.
Well, I was there that day, and it was awesome. I mean, it was almost one of those. It almost felt like it wasn't true. You know how, because back then, they'd give the belt to Kevin or they give the belt to Kerry, and you thought they won it, and then they come back and say, "Oh no," because Ric Flair hit the referee or whatever. They do the old switcheroo, and I mean, that day at Texas Stadium, it was like, oh my gosh, are they going to do the old switcheroo? It was kind of like, I remember my sister was there and she was excited with me, and I was like, well, give it a couple more minutes. Let's not celebrate too soon.
Just hold up.
Was David the true heir apparent to the NWA title to drop it to Flair? Was that the plan all along? And then all of a sudden the Kerry just, with David's untimely death, was Kerry just the right place, right time?
Well, the talk was that David they were going to put the title on David. That was what was planning to happen. David was phenomenal. I mean, I just can't. I was watching recently a match. There's a match from 1977. It was on the old network. I don't know if you can find it on the new one. I don't know how to search for matches on the Peacock version, but neither here nor there. But there's a match, if you can find it on YouTube, Harley Race and David Von Erich in 1977, and it was the year that he debuted. He made his debut. Let me tell you something. It is phenomenal. It's phenomenal to see him wrestle. And so the reason why they put the belt on Kerry, guys, was because
David died.
Was
David? They didn't let him hold it. They didn't let him. And I'm sorry to cut you off, Chris, because if I remember correctly, Kerry did not have the belt long. He might have only had it for like a week or 9 days or something. But they want the NWA at least, and I think he lost it back to Flair. But he at least, they wanted to have that moment where at Texas Stadium, it was basically, the match everybody thought would happen with David, but didn't. And, you've already described to us, and I think that's just so amazing that you were actually there for what is considered one of the pinnacle moments of wrestling history.
Yeah, and it was hot that day, too. It was like 114 degrees in there, man.
That's Texas.
I was gonna say it's Texas. What do you expect? Was David the best wrestler of the Von Erich clan?
I think he was. I mean, they were all good. I mean, Mike didn't want to be a wrestler, so his heart wasn't in it. Okay, but the other guys, they were good. They, one was a high flyer. Kevin was the high flyer. Kerry had the body and the strength, right? But David had the, I was told that he had the mind for the business, and he had the, I don't know, he just had the pretty much the technical side down and the business side down. That he was like he had a little more wrestling smarts. He
understood he understood both sides, where like he could put together a story,
right?
But also understood the business side, that hey, sometimes you can't always win, but you can still do good business.
Right. And going back to the NWA title, Kerry had that belt for about 19 days. And in the book, and it talks about that the reason why they took the belt off him was because he had shown up at some matches that they didn't think he was all there.
His demons were coming out, is basically.
Yeah, like maybe he wasn't as alert as he needed to be.
Right.
Or as
there's an interesting
they felt that
development.
he needed to be.
I mean, that era of WCCW wrestling was terrible, and you can even go back to not even just the Von Erichs. You can go back to oh god, the name is escaping me.
Gino Hernandez.
Gino Hernandez.
Yes,
Gino Hernandez. I mean, all of that was a terrible time in WCCW.
Well, he's got a chapter in this book. Lance was there, and so this book, and I'd like to kind of break this book down. It basically has like 3 sections, right?
Mm-hmm.
It starts off in Dallas, but then it goes into Portland, and it stays up there. It goes to Portland and his time coming back. What's interesting is that in Portland, he met Steve Simpson, right? Well, Steve Simpson had family in Dallas and told him, hey, I want to get to Dallas. If you can help me get to Dallas. So when Lance was down here, he had told the David Manning and Fritz about Steve Simpson. And he said, hey, look, have him send some tapes and some pictures. You guys remember Steve Simpson, right?
Steve and Sean Simpson. He had a brother,
yeah,
too.
Steven, yeah. Steve came first. And then, well, the interesting thing is Steve is from South Africa. And Lance met Sammy Cohen, the dad, that was his wrestling name. he met him up in Portland, and he said to him, and this is even before Lance comes to Dallas. Lance was up there for several months and at times didn't even know if he was still coming to Dallas. They wanted him to get his wrestling legs under him. Well, Sammy Cohen, Steve Simpson's dad, says, hey, look, if you ever want to go to South Africa, you could always wrestle for me. Well, in Dallas, when Lance, now you got to understand Lance is an adventurist. He'll go anywhere where the wind blows because he just wants to, he just likes something new, right? And when things were kind of going down, Lance saw the writing on the wall in world class. He was wrestling 2 times a night. He was nursing at the end. He was nursing a shoulder injury because Nord the Barbarian kind of landed him wrong on his shoulder. And so he took some time off to heal his shoulder, but he didn't tell him. So they basically thought he went AWOL. Well, in the meantime, he's going down, scoping out South Africa. And he ends up staying down there in South Africa. and that was one of the reasons why we called the book Lance by Chance, because had he not been on the golf course, David Manning would have never discovered him. He never would have been wrestling. Had he not gone to Portland and met Steve Simpson, he would have never gone to South Africa. So the 3 parts in this book are Portland, Dallas, and South Africa. And when you get to the South African part of this book, it's pretty amazing because the wrestling is different down there. And he started some businesses down there. And one thing about Lance is he no holds barred, man. This guy talks about smuggling guns and smuggling auto parts in third world countries over there and has no bones about it. And he talks about how the what do you call the Scotland Yard was
they were looking
was knocking on his door. Yeah, absolutely.
They're like Scotland Yard. So we would be remiss to you have a new book that I believe that just came out or is coming out, one of the two. I'm sure you have Wrestleville, the Pro Wrestling Vault, Volume 1.
That is correct. Now, this came out. Actually, it came out at the beginning of this year. What's good though is Volume 2 is real close to being printed.
I guess I'm gonna have to break into the wallet and buy some of these books. I want to read the.
No kidding.
I want to read the Lance book.
Okay.
But I also want to read the Wrestleville book because the description that I see says it is a book that celebrates professional wrestling, 35 short stories of veterans and stars on the rise from the NWA. So
and independent scene too, Chris.
Right, well, obviously, yes. So why don't you take us into what was your motivation to write this book and what you want people to get out of the book?
Well, I'm really proud of this book, and for many reasons. It's it started as an idea, right? And these were stories that I was writing for my website, and when it came time to I started working on another project, my friend was like, look, you have all these stories, you've written all these stories, and my website had gone through some changes, and so he was like, look, you should package these stories, and because the guys I kind of run around with, their mindset is, if you don't capture this history, if you don't capture these stories, these stories are going to go away when these wrestlers pass away. That's the mindset of the writing friends that they encouraged me to document these stories. And this book is really, I started writing it right before the Billy Corgan takeover, right? So the transition, there's Tim Storm has a couple stories in here. Barrett Brown, before he wins the NWA Junior Heavyweight title. And then what's really neat about this is I interview Eric Andrews, who at the time had the NWA Junior Heavyweight title. And then he lost it to Mr. USA. I interviewed him. And then Mr. USA loses the belt to Barrett Brown. And then I interviewed him after he won the belt. So it chronicles that time. I have Mike Rapata. He was an NWA champion early 2000s. He's in this book. I've got Tim Storm. Harley Race has a story in this book. And so there's I think I can't remember. I think it's like three NWA World Heavyweight Champions, and then 3 NWA Junior Heavyweight Champions. Also, too, Sean Hernandez is in this book. C.W. Anderson is in this book. Greg Anthony, Sir Mo, Bruce Thorpe has an interview in here. James Beard, Bill Dundee, Tracy Smothers, Chase Owens, Ricky Morton. So there's a variety of guys, and my friend from New Orleans, he's a photographer on the Gulf Coast and a wrestling photographer, and he had all these pictures, and he said, look, if you can use any of these pictures, put them in the book, because I'm not going to put them in a book. I'm not going to do anything. So I
might as well get some use.
Yeah, so there's a section in here. It's got about 400 pictures, right? And I have a picture section in the back. And I was formatting this book right when Daphne passed away, and that was an emotional time, right?
Tragic.
And so on the last page of the book, I put a remembrance to her, and that makes the book special too for me. And also too, every one of these books comes signed by one of the wrestlers in the book. This one's signed by Mr. USA. But I have Tim Storm, I have Bobby Fulton, C.W. Anderson, Greg Anthony, Damian Wayne. I have his autograph. Sean Hernandez, Chaz Taylor, James Beard. So there's you can. It's another treat,
So if you order the book, you don't really know who you're going to get the autograph from.
Absolutely, you're right. Yeah, it's a surprise.
And see, that's something that's really, you don't hear much of that these days. So that's something that's really enticing for us, like for Chris and I, let alone audience, like the wrestling fans out there who want to get their hands on the book.
So talk about a little bit about your website, wrestleville.com. That is it your site? It's your site that you run. I know there's podcasts that go on there. So how did that start?
Okay, so I started, when I told you I was transitioning from the MMA to writing about wrestling, I started wrestleville.com, and I was just writing. I was just writing these stories and these stories here. So I was doing that, and then I started writing the Lance book. And then when I was writing the Lance book, I couldn't write stories for the website, and then I started working on this book, and then I started working on volume 2, and I've got another book in the projects. And I was like, look, if I'm going to write, I need to write these books, because they're not going to get done if I don't. Right. So I started doing the podcast because, someone said, look, you can put commercials in your podcast. So I put commercials for my books and my podcast. Right. But I got like Thunder Rosa's on there. I got Jimmy Rave before he passed away. I have Silas Young on there. I have C.W. Anderson on there. I've got some coming up. I don't know if you guys know who Rocky Reynolds is, but I just posted part 2 of Rocky Reynolds. He's 4-time NWA Junior Heavyweight Champion. That dude is the real deal, and he talks about how he got started in wrestling in part one, and then the tragedy that ultimately had him walk out of wrestling. I have that in there.
Yeah.
Terry Morton's on the podcast. I have right now, I have about 60 something podcasts on there. All my podcasts run about 30 minutes. They don't run super long. I think the longest one is maybe about an hour, but I think that's only one. But most of them anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes tops, but 40 minutes for me is kind of long. I have a hard time listening to a long podcast. I've got several long podcasts that I don't finish. And I don't know if it's because of my schedule or my attention span or what, but for me, 30 minutes is good, and I get a lot of really good response from the podcast, the interviews. A lot of people like them because they're conversations, and I don't go in there with anything written down. I just, I've been in news for about 20 years. I've worked in media, in PR for, the times I'm not working in news, right? So, so I mean, this is kind of, it's just kind of my thing, and just have a conversation. I talk to them in the beginning and just say, hey, we're going to talk about this, probably talk about this, and probably talk about this. And they may say, like the other night, somebody said, don't talk about my brother. I said, okay, we won't talk about your brother, and we'll just start it and we'll go, and we just go where the conversation goes.
I see you recently had a conversation with Soraya Knight, which is if you're not familiar with it, that's Paige's from the WWE's mother, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. And I'm sure that was a great, insightful interview, because that's a wrestling family right there. Paige started when she was like 15, 16. So I mean,
yeah. Well, there's two on there. There's one on there with Ricky and Soraya. Ricky Knight's their dad, and so I interviewed her parents, both of them together, and it was such an interesting conversation because we had talked about what was going on in COVID and how they work with other promotions. It's not really like a competition. They kind of like it's kind of like a community out there, and they're in Norwich, England, and so they talk about how they were talking about how they teach first aid, and they got the government involved, and I mean, it's just how they're trying to better wrestling. It was just really amazing story. And she also talked about how her son Zach, he taught a blind kid how to wrestle.
Oh wow!
And he actually even did a move off the ropes. It was an incredible story. And when they got done, they thanked me. They're like, hey, that's not your normal wrestling conversation. I just let that conversation go wherever it was gonna go, right? And it was awesome. The one with her mom was something I was gonna put on the website, and it was just a little Q&A, and it was such a good conversation that I just put the audio on there as well. And that's that Q&A is gonna be in volume 2.
I bet you, and it'd kind of be really cool to get her Paige and her mom on there at the same time.
Oh, absolutely.
That's an interview for the ages.
Yeah, I mean, and the UK wrestling community, they compete with each other, but they also help each other. That I have heard very much so from everything. So Vinny, I mean, your book, you got 2 great books out there. And we thank you for coming on. But we got a question. We're getting near the end of the show, but we do this every week. We do this Wrestle Talk Podcast Game Show Challenge. So I want to know if you're up for a little bit of trivia with the one and only Maestro Jeremy Karp as your opponent.
Oh, this is gonna go well.
What do you say?
I'll give it a go.
All right. So it is now time for I gotta find there it is. ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the weekly Wrestle Talk Podcast Game Show Challenge. It is going to be best 2 out of 3 falls. It's going to be the one and only, our co-host, the maestro, Jeremy Karp, is going to take on our special guest, Vinny Berry. So, gentlemen, are you guys ready?
What are the rules? I'm going to be.
All right. I am going to give you a topic, and I'm going to have 3 questions for you, and the winner will walk out of here as champion. Tonight, in honor of the Wrestle Talk Podcast Challenge category by the book, I will give you 3 professional wrestling personalities that have written books. When you think you know the wrestler, please shout out your answer. The first person to 2 falls wins tonight's game. So, Jeremy, do you understand the rules?
Yes, sir, and as best as I can do.
Vinny, do you understand the rules?
I'm ready to rumble.
All right, let's get things started. Question 1. This WWE Hall of Famer has written such books as Titan Brown, Scooter, Countdown to Lockdown, The Hardcore Diary.
Big boy!
Oh. That's a close one, but I'm going to have to give it to our guest, Vinny Berry. He started Mick first. I mean, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chris. I think that's fair.
This is a screw job, I'm telling you.
I really just want a couple of books. No. Anyway. So we're up one to Vinny's got 1, Jeremy's got 0. Question 2. This professional wrestler has won the World Heavyweight Championship in WWE and AEW. He has written books as Undisputed, The Best in the World.
CM Punk.
No. At
Moxley.
No. At what I have no idea. No is a 4-letter word. A lion's tail.
Bryan Danielson.
No.
What?
A lion's tail.
Oh, Chris Jericho.
Yes. That's correct. I'm sorry I had to emphasize that for you, but come on. The Lionheart, Chris Jericho.
You know what? I should have already had a second one. We'll go ahead.
No, you didn't. Anyway, this is why the snitch doesn't like me. Anyway, question 3.
Yeah, ain't that the truth.
This is the deciding fall. So winner takes all here. This 2-time WWE Hall of Famer has written such books as Wrestling for My Life, The Life, Reality, and Faith of a WWE Superstar, and Heartbreak and Triumph.
Shawn Michaels.
Oh, God, I hate to do this, man. I hate to do this, but Jeremy Karp is the win. The maestro is the winner.
You know, I'm just going to say, and this is dead honest, I've probably won this thing like maybe twice. So my win percentage is very low, so I'm embracing every moment of this.
The hosts don't do very good in this podcast.
No, I think the only 2 times I've won this is this one and when I swept Herb. But other than that, I probably won a couple other times, but you know what? It's still so few and far in between.
All right, Vinny. Vinny, one last time, thank you very much for coming on the Wrestle Talk podcast to talk about your books. Where, if someone is interested to buy your books, where can they buy them at? Give us all your information so we can
except your social. Don't give us that.
Right. You can get I have autographed Lance books too. So if you want an autographed book by Lance himself, you go to russellville.com. The books are on russellville.com. You can get both the books there. I also have the books on Amazon. If you want a signed copy by Lance, you can't get it at Amazon. Though, however, if you go to russellville.com, you can get both the books. I just got T-shirts in. They're not on my website. If you can see that.
Oh,
Ooh,
nice.
those are nice t-shirts.
And their bargain deal, $15 plus shipping, comes out to about $20. If you want a shirt, I have a limited. DM me at Vincent Berry on Facebook, and I can hook you up with a shirt. You can pay through Cash App or PayPal. Just message me. We'll work out the details. But the books are at russellville.com. And please check out my podcast. I got podcasts up there. I try to put up, try to do two a week if I can. But usually there's, 1 to 2 a week. Just depends on, the ebb and flow.
The ebb and flow of what is the world of life right now,
right?
Because we're all busy, we all do things, and sometimes we try to exceed what we're capable of. So, but I mean, Vinny, I have so much appreciate you for coming on, talking about the book, your past book, and your new book, Russellville Volume 1, and then you got Russellville Volume 2 coming out here probably pretty shortly. So it's going to be you're a busy man.
Yeah, I'm already writing my 4th book. The 3rd book is real close into printing, but I'm real excited about the 4th book. I'm still kind of keeping it close to my vest only because I want to dig into it a little more before like, hey, I'm ready this way. Here's the one thing I learned about book writing. A lot of people just don't finish them, and boy, I tell you, it's been a learning lesson for me, but that one's getting finished. Matter of fact, I've did about 35 hours of interview on it and research. Well, I'm constantly doing research on it still, but I've already started writing it, so it's going to happen. It'll probably I should finish it writing by next summer for sure.
Awesome.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. Well, we hope that when you get that written and when Russellville 2 comes out, that maybe you come back on, we can promote the books for you and get you some sales, and just hope everything goes well for you. Vincent, Vinny, we appreciate you for coming on as always. Thank you once again for being a member of the Wrestle Talk Podcast family. We will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Wonderful night, Vinny.
All right, you too. And Volume 2 is going to be bigger and better than Volume 1.
I believe it. I'm going to have to go spend some money this weekend when I get paid. So, all right, man. Thanks, Vinny.
Thank you. Good night, guys. Thanks.
Have a wonderful night. Whew.
Carp, are you tired yet?
Oh, absolutely. It's been a busy day from start to finish, but let me tell you, what a guy Vinny is.
I mean, two great books.
Action.
2 great books. He's got a 3rd on the way, and then a fourth in the pocket. So,
and he'll make a 4th, and there's it takes so long to write a book. So he really pours his heart and soul into it, and I'm really excited to read each volume. Read Volume 1 and Volume 2.
I'm a nerd of the game, so I kind of really do want to read the Lance Von Erich.
That one especially, yes.
Yeah.
I have to get the Lance Von Erich because, I'll spend time aimlessly just reading up on wrestling history. So, what better way than to get it straight from the source?
So, well, Carp, what do you think? What did you think of tonight's show?
Tonight's show, it was as great as I knew it was going to be, and you did as great a job as I knew you would do. So
I appreciate it. So I know that you like to talk about some things at the very end of the show, and I even updated the
look at that. Beautiful.
I even updated that for. And I hope I got it right because
you did.
Okay, so yeah. I know you like to send us off in style, so I'm gonna pop off and I'm gonna let you send us home in style tonight. So, Carp, take it home.
All righty. Well, folks, first off, I want to give a special shout out to Big Sexy Chris Rodell, the voice of Dynamo Pro Wrestling, for the amazing job he has done tonight, stepping in both behind the scenes and doing his amazing work in front of the camera. So big shout out there. But yes, As you can tell at the bottom is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. Used to be a long phone number, but now thankfully they've dialed it down to 988. It is available 24/7, 365 days a year, 366 on a leap year. And we put this after every show. We've done this since Daphne tragically took her life last year. And I just want you all to know, I put it up here because I want you all to know that you're never alone. There is always somebody out there that loves you, that cares about you, that, in this world, there's so many, it's troubling times all across the world. There's so many struggles you go through, but you never have to go through them alone. The proper resources are out there, and you're always loved. I love you, and I know Chris does, and thank you all so much for tuning in this evening, and thanks to Vinny Berry for being such an amazing guest. We look forward to whoever's going to be on the host next week on the Wrestle Talk podcast. This amazing team. The show is going to be just as great as it always is. And so on behalf of Big Sexy Chris Rodell, I'm the Maestro Jeremy Karp. Have a wonderful night, and remember, life is a book full of empty pages just waiting to be written in. Make your lives worth reading. Good night, everybody.